Thank you again, everybody, for jumping in on this call. Again, we do have the pleasure of Melissa Walls being on our call today. Along with her, we also have Starla Schwartz, who's our Director of Clinical Services, joining us for the call as well. Really excited, and I don't want to steal a lot of Melissa's thunder here, but she is one of our excellent physical therapists who's been with us at Spine and Sport now for, it's been at least 2.5 years now, Melissa?
Yeah.
Time flies. And Melissa is going to be sharing you all her firsthand experience on ownership in physical therapy. And this is such a great opportunity to talk about this topic because I know in most programs, they don't really go into much detail about this. And I know that talking to most of you, some of you have kind of played around with the idea of ownership in the future. So really excited to have this opportunity to speak with Melissa and kind of hear from her experience. Really quick, I also did want to welcome Rick Katz onto the call. Always great to have his support with us. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to you, Melissa.
Perfect. Well, thank you guys very much. I really appreciate the opportunity to speak to you guys today regarding my experience owning a practice, how I got there, and where I'm at today. So again, like Patrick said, my name is Melissa Walls, and I'm going to just first off tell you that technology is not necessarily my biggest forte. So if I have some technology errors here, please forgive me. But that's why we have Patrick to help me out. So I did decide that I wanted to become a physical therapist very young. I think a lot of people decide, as they experience life and decide a little bit later on, but I broke my leg when I was 14, actually really badly. And so I obviously went through a lot of physical therapy during that rehabilitation. I thought it was a great career. I knew I wanted to do something in healthcare, and I just thought that this added to the mix to really be able to see people get through injuries and get back to doing what it is that they wanted to do. So at the time, getting into PT school was really difficult, and I'm sure it is right now as well. So you guys also know the same challenges. So I was really determined. I was lucky enough to go to UC Davis. UC Davis has an excellent program for the prereqs to be able to get into PT school. And so it was very easy for me to get into Chapman. It just, my undergrad degree lended very well to be able to understand what I needed to do to get into Chapman. So I got into Chapman University right around the time where the doctorate was coming out. So yes, I am that old. And so the doctorate really was transitioning. I was the second graduating class from Chapman with the doctorate degree. So very lucky about that. PT school is very different than it was during that era. And so, I think you guys are in a phenomenal place to come through PT school and out of PT school, because the programs have developed so much, and you guys gain a lot of experience and expertise before you even get out of school. So I just want to say that you guys are in a phenomenal place in our profession in that regard. So you should be very proud of yourselves for that. Right out of school, I will be honest with you, I was not necessarily a very confident physical therapist. So I found a very small practice that had only been open for like 9 months, and they were trying to hire a physical therapist, and one of their specialties was Pilates, which I had never done. And so they hired me. It was only me and the owner working as physical therapists. My practice was able to grow very slow as a PT, so it was great. I had a lot of mentorship. I also had a lot of challenges because I was practicing right next to the owner. And you guys will kind of see as you go through your careers, a lot of people want the most experienced person. So I went through a lot of growth in my first year. And one of the things that I could tell you guys is you guys are going to go through a lot of growth in your first few years as practitioners as well. So hang in there and you guys will get there. So once I worked there for a few years, it was really me and the owner. And I thought to myself, I had goals for myself getting out of school. I had 5 and 10-year goals, and I'm not getting to where I want to be, which is either in management or to own my own practice. So I decided to expand my career, and I went to the Children's Hospital of Orange County, otherwise known as CHOC. And I worked there for a year. I did pediatrics. So about 3-4 years after I got out of PT school, I completely switched from orthopedics to pediatrics. And that is, again, another phenomenal thing about our career is we can go into different sectors of physical therapy. So it was a challenge. I had to learn lots of new things again. I decided ultimately that I had an opportunity to purchase the prior company that I had worked for, which was South County Physical Therapy and Pilates. And I did that with a business partner. So one of the things I will tell you guys is that I did not do this journey alone. I happen to be very lucky in the fact that at the same time I was hired at South County Physical Therapy, there was another individual, and his name is Darren. He was hired on the business side of the same company, and he learned a lot of business administration while I was learning to become a phenomenal physical therapist. And so him and I together decided to purchase South County Physical Therapy and Pilates from the prior owners. And we renamed it Envision Sport Physical Therapy and Pilates. And we renamed it purposely for a few different reasons. And I want to share this with you because I think, one of the things you guys will need to do is decide a name and the purpose behind a name, a mission statement, a value statement. And those aren't easy things to do. But we had the opportunity to go to the private practice section before we decided to purchase South County. And when we were driving home, we were so inspired by the private practice section conference. And we were trying to think, like, what do we want our futures to be? And we decided that we wanted to name the company that we were going to purchase Envision Sport Physical Therapy and Pilates for a few reasons. And one of the big reasons is that every single person who walks through those doors, whether or not it be a patient, an employee, us ourselves, anybody who walks through those doors, a client of our Pilates studio, has a vision of where they want to be when they're in that facility, or how they want this facility to get them to the vision that they want to evolve into. So do they want to get better? Do they want to become more fit? Do they want to get further in their career? And so that's why we named our company Envision Sport Physical Therapy and Pilates. So we owned it for about 8 or 9 years. We had ran the company for maybe a year or two prior to that. So in total, about 10 years of experience for myself in the ownership or managerial position and role before we merged with Spine and Sport. And during that time, we went from 1 to 2 locations. And then we tripled the revenue, and we added additional revenue streams, including the Pilates studio. So those were big accomplishments for us, especially in a time period where right before we purchased it is when Blue Shield Blue Cross reduced their payments, and a lot of insurance items were changing. This was right after the Obamacare, right after Direct Access. And I will tell you, I think Direct Access led to one of the capability of having the success that we did. And I'll kind of go through that. So I know that most of you don't have yourself up on screen, but I just want you guys to think about, do you have 1 and 5 year goals coming out of school? So I hope you do. One of our instructors in school made us write down our 1 and 5 year goals. And at the time, to be honest with you, I thought it was a silly exercise. I was like, I don't know what I want to do in 1 to 5 years. I have no idea. I just want to survive, I think. But I'm really glad she did, because I think if she had not made me write down my 1 and 5 year goals, I never would have gone to chalk. I never would have decided to be bold enough to buy a practice and march forward towards my goals, because a lot of times you get very complacent in the position you're at and you forget that you had goals and dreams that you wanted to get after. So my challenge to you guys would be, wherever you are at in school, whether or not it's your first year, second year, or third year, I want you guys by the end of today to write down 1 and 5 year goals. They might change, right? But at least it gets you guys thinking about this. And I want you to tuck them away in a spot where you can look back at them regularly, once a month, once every 6 months, something along those lines, regular enough to see, are you making the steps that you need to be able to obtain that 1 and 5 year goal? And if you want, you can write down a 10-year goal too. That seems like crazy far away, but trust me, like the 10 years go by really fast. Okay, so one of the things that I will be honest with you, I didn't really consider when I was deciding to purchase a practice for physical therapy is, what does the future of physical therapy look like? And I am probably not the best person to answer a lot of these questions. Rick might be a better person to answer a lot of these questions, or some of the other individuals who are in our company and in our profession. But I listen to a lot of podcasts. I've been through a lot of things in the last 18 years that I've practiced. And to be able to see some of the opportunities and some of the challenges that we're going to have in physical therapy. So we'll start with the opportunities, because it's always nice to have positive things, right? So I don't know if this is necessarily a hugely positive thing, but for our business, it is. The population is aging, right? Which tends to mean that they are going to be in need of our services. The need for physical therapy is growing. We have more individuals every single year who need our services. And I think because of our doctoral education, the education we have and the services that we can provide to the public is also growing, right? So we're being more creative in what it is that we can do for the public as well. And I think the public has a better education about physical therapy. 20 years ago, a lot of people didn't even know that the field of physical therapy existed. These days, most individuals do know that physical therapy exists. They may not really understand what it is, but the general population, most people do know that this is a career. We're very innovative. Like, what it is that we're doing in physical therapy is changing and evolving, and we need to, with a doctoral degree, right? We are becoming more independent, and we are innovating our practices of what it is that we do and how we help and serve the public. We do that lots of different ways. There's also a lot of different equipment that's out there and coming out, and different pieces of education, research, all of those things. So it's a very exciting time. We do have some challenges, and you probably have heard of some of these challenges, but may not really understand them. And I do think that before you were to open your own practice, you need to understand a little bit more about these challenges so that you can plan for them and persevere over them and succeed, right? All of these are things that you can succeed through. There are lots of physical therapy practices out there, and they're thriving. And so the thing is that some of this might be a little bit deterring for you to start your journey on doing this, but I would tell you, please do not let it deter you from doing this. There's lots of capability out there for all of you guys to open your own practice and be successful. However, we need to recognize that there are lower reimbursements today than there were 10 years ago, 15 years ago, 20 years ago. There are ways to supersede that by, adding cash-based services, for instance, or there are a lot of cash-based programs, like just entire clinics out there. It depends on where you're going to be as to whether or not you're successful. It depends on whether or not you have a niche. I don't know if it's really niche or niche, but it depends on whether or not you become really good at something and you can help a certain sector of the population. So there's lots of different ways to overcome that. Higher salaries. So we all know about inflation over the last few years. That has made it difficult for everybody to survive. And therefore, what has occurred is the salaries that people are making today in physical therapy are higher than where they were even 3, 4, or 5 years ago. I will tell you, if I made what a new grad made today coming out of school, I would have literally jumped for joy. So I will say that cost of living is higher though. So that's the thing. Higher salaries are great for employees, right? But if you're the employer, you have to be able to overcome the cost of hiring employees. Higher demand should be actually under the opportunities. I don't know why that was underneath there. So we'll just say that there's a higher demand, but with the higher demand, I think that does lead to some burnout of physical therapists, to be honest with you. And there is a smaller workforce. There's a current shortage of physical therapists in the country. Okay, so many of us dream about big, huge things when we are younger. My dream for ownership really sparked from the fact that my dad had a small consulting firm for engineering. And I saw at first the fact that he had a lot more freedom than the years that he worked for somebody else. What I also saw, though, was that he worked extremely hard. And I think that there's this dream versus reality of what ownership of anything is, right? So we all, when we're little, all we want to be is an adult so we can make our own decisions and we can forge forward and not have our parents tell us what to do, right? Then we get to adulthood and we're like, oh, whoa, this is hard. I have to make decisions. I have to be responsible for my own bills. What if I didn't make enough this month? Whatever it might be. So I would say that you multiply that, and that's what ownership is. Okay. So we all think ownership is more money and more freedom, right? And there are a lot of successful people out there in every single industry that you're going to treat even, right? Where they make it sound so enticing to own your own business, whether it's a practice or a consulting firm or anything. And there is a lot to that, right? There, you could make a lot more money. You could have a lot more freedom. But most of the time, the dream is not the reality. And so in my experience, right, ownership, what it really was, which is not bad, but it is what it is a lot of responsibility. So you have to understand that you are no longer just responsible for yourself and the patients that you're caring for, if you're a physical therapist or a PTA, right? You are responsible for every person who comes through those doors. You are responsible for your staff. You're responsible for the property, right? You're responsible for, the profession, moving the profession forward in a greater way than if you are a staff physical therapist. You're going to have a lot of difficult days. And when you have a lot of those difficult days, it's really easy to get very down, right? And so you have to have a growth mindset. If you don't have a growth mindset, you're not going to be successful. And that might sound really harsh, but that's just the reality. You have to be consistently thinking outside the box. You're going to have things come at you every single day. And those things are going to be opportunities for you to solve problems and for you to become more successful. They're also going to be opportunities for you to crumble and become unsuccessful, if that's even a word, I don't know. But the point is that each day you're gonna have to walk a mountain, and that's okay because that's what you sign up for. But you do need to know that that's what you're signing up for. You have to have dedication. This is not something that you decide to do one day, decide it was a great fun project, and then it's going to grow on its own. You have to go into your office every single day, and you have to have dedication to being the best physical therapist that you can possibly be for your patients. You have to be the best team leader that you can be for your team. You have to dedicate time to yourself, which is real struggle. And I will tell you, like, I wasn't necessarily that great at that, to be honest with you. It took me a long time to understand that. You have to still be able to dedicate time to your family. You have to dedicate time to the physicians, the relationships. A lot of this is about relationship building. So I will be honest with you, I'm not necessarily naturally an extrovert. I would tell you that I really do get nervous in front of people. I get nervous to like meet a lot of new people. I get nervous about what they're thinking about me, all of those things. So I had to really challenge myself to put myself out there in vulnerable positions and get no's, right? Like, no, I'm not going to send patients to you. No, I don't want to come back to physical therapy. No, whatever it might be. Most of the time, I got really good at this. So I got mostly yeses, right? Yeah, great. We're going to send patients to you. Like, we know who you are. You take excellent care of people. And so, you know, you develop relationships with your patients, you develop relationships with the community, everywhere. So, but it's about relationship building. So hopefully you're still excited about owning a physical therapy practice one day. It is a great thing and a great opportunity. But I want to be real about it, right? You have to have a plan. So, you know, you don't just go out there one day and decide, I want to own a physical therapy practice or a business in general, any business, and then like just decide that you're going to do it and it becomes successful. There is a lot of planning. When Darren and I decided to buy our practice that was owned by somebody else prior, we worked for about a year on the deal. And the reason is because we had no idea what we were doing. So everything that Darren and I did from the time that we started deciding we wanted to open or buy this business to the day that we signed and were acquired by Spine and Sport, Darren and I were self-taught. We taught ourselves everything we knew. We didn't really have people that we could turn to and constantly ask questions to, although the prior owners were great. It's not that they weren't great, but they were self-taught. So we were kind of all learning on our own and being able to, again, use our relationships to understand different things. We also were in a very competitive market in Orange County. So in the Rancho Santa Margarita city, I think the last population census I knew was 45 or 46,000 people in that city, which is not a huge city. There are 6 physical therapy offices. That is a lot of offices in a very small space. So we have a very competitive market. It's not like we could really turn to other people right there in that market and say, you know, oh my gosh, what are you guys doing? So we can learn too, right? They are trying to compete for the same business and market share that we had, right? So you want a plan. That's my point. So you need to develop a business plan. I'm hoping in school you guys have done at least a lecture on planning a business. So I know we did. We had a class that had to do with business. It was like a 1-unit class, and we actually had to come up with some of these things that you would need to know in order to develop a business plan. Hopefully you have heard of a SWOT analysis. That's your strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. So if you have not, then you need to use resources to understand what all these things are prior to going out and forging your pathway. So the SBA, the Small Business Association, is a great resource for you to be able to utilize. The other resources that you guys can use are the APTA private practice section. So hopefully as students, you guys are all part of the American Physical Therapy Association. There are different subsections of the American Physical Therapy Association that you can join. I'm assuming you can join the private practice section as a student. I have no idea why you wouldn't be able to. If you think this is in your future to own a practice one day, I would advise you to become a member of the private practice section. If you want to do pediatrics, orthopedics, whatever section you or field of physical therapy you want to own that practice in, I would also join that section in the physical therapy private or in the American Physical Therapy Association, because they're a great resource and they're very supportive of you and the success of the profession and the success of you. The other thing I would tell you is practice putting yourself out there in vulnerable positions. So become a leader, right? Become a leader of your clinic that you're in. Become a positive person to move and forage in anything it is that you're doing, whether or not you're on a softball team or whether or not you already have kids and you're, part of anything that the kids are doing and Girl Scouts or whatever it might be, right? But become involved in leadership, because this will tell you whether or not you want to own your own business one day. Everybody is going to come to you for advice, and you can turn to other people and get advice, but ultimately you're the one who makes the decisions in your practice, right? And so if you don't enjoy everybody coming to you and asking for questions and asking for advice and asking for all of these things, it may not be for you, because this is what's going to be your life, right? So getting experience in a position of leadership is going to be really important for you to understand what your day-to-day life is going to be like in the future. You need to self-develop. So I remember prior to buying Envision Sport Physical Therapy, I asked my prior boss, like, hey, like, do you have any advice on books or anything a class I can take to become like a better leader, so I can really understand, some of the skills that I need, some things that I'm good at, some of the things I'm not good at, all of those things. And they were like, I mean, we just sort of tried to read. It's like, okay. So again, I had to become very self-practiced, right? I needed to find my way. So I utilized lots of different avenues to develop those skills myself. And I still, to this day, am trying to develop myself. You have to become really good at looking internally and understanding yourself. Where are your strengths? Where are your weaknesses? How do I improve on my weaknesses? And how do I continue to build on my strengths? Sometimes if your weaknesses, it might not be like how necessarily you improve on your weaknesses, but who can I add to my team that will take up that weakness, right? And so they're much better at this than I am. It's not going to be worth my time necessarily to like develop myself completely in this realm or world, like the administrative part, like for me with Darren, right? That would have been a whole lot for me to take on myself. So Darren and I were a great team and partner. He was not a physical therapist, so he couldn't do what I did. And I was a physical therapist, but I didn't have all the knowledge that he had to be able to do the administrative side. So him and I would learn from one another, even though we didn't have the skill set. And so we learned and grew with each other as well. There's so many podcasts out there that were not available when I was doing this. But there's tons of podcasts that I just listen to in my car. And there's information about marketing out there. There's information about, what these leaders of the industry are doing in their own practices. There's tons of books out there. For Starla, her leadership program in Spine and Sport, which I will tell you, not every company has such a program. It's such a great program that Spine and Sport does for people to develop the skills that you need to be successful. So I just want to shout out to Starla that, like, I never had anything like that. And the fact that we have something like that, and she's such a great leader in that respect, is huge, right? This is my contact information. If you guys have questions and you want to reach out to me and just kind of pick my brain about certain things, because I didn't get into like all the details about everything that it is that we did, just more like the general stuff. And I'm going to open it up to questions in a few minutes. But one of the things that I would tell you guys is that there is so much to starting a practice that I think it would be very difficult this day and age to do it all by yourself. So again, using the private practice section would be huge. They have resources that you can utilize as well. You have to go out there and you have to find space to rent. If you want to rent space, maybe you don't want to rent space. Maybe you want to be going into people's homes. Then there's things you have to think about with going into people's homes, right? There's risks and with that as well. So, but if you want to rent a space, you need to know what it is dollar per space. We need to know, are there CAMs, which is like additional items you have to pay for on the rental space. You're not going to be an expert on that. So again, finding a realtor to be able to help you with commercial real estate and then taking that time to find out that information is going to be crucial for renting in the proper location. What is the area like? Are you around a lot of foot traffic? Are you not around a lot of foot traffic? So in our Rancho Santa Margarita location, one of the downsides to where we are located is we're not in a retail space. We're in an industrial space. So we don't have a lot of foot traffic, but we do have people who are driving by all the time. And it was important for us to have a good signage out there so that people could see our name constantly. So those are things to think about just when you are talking about, where do I put my brick and mortar store, right? Then you need to get insurance contracts. Okay. So when you sign up with an insurance company, you don't just get the contracts, right? Rick could tell you about this more than I can. We were really lucky when we purchased the Spine and South County Physical Therapy and Pilates. We sort of inherited those contracts because when they first started, I believe it took them about 6 months to get in network with a lot of those insurance companies. And so, then you're trying the first 6 months of your business when you're trying to get people to know who you are and come try something new. You're also telling them that you're out of network with their insurance company and they're going to have to pay more money to see you than they would have to pay for somebody who is in network, right? So you have to get insurance contracts. You have to understand your professional liability insurance. So you have to understand it's not just you're not just insuring yourself, but you're insuring the facility, anybody who works in the facility. So you have to get quotes from insurance companies to insure you. You have to understand what it is to have payroll, right? So payroll typically is an expense that, again, you're not going to become an expert at. So you're going to utilize a payroll service, but you need to understand that you have to pay work comp in payroll. You do pay into all these other items, taxes, all of these things. You pay payroll taxes, right? So you have to have some understanding of accounting, right? Then you have to understand some HR stuff, right? What do you need to hire somebody? What is their first day? What does their first day need to look like? What are some HR rules and laws based upon whatever state and maybe even city that you are going to be in? So you have to understand some of the HR hats. So you're wearing all these different hats because you don't have the capability of paying all these different types of people when you're first starting out. And you're going to have mistakes and you're going to learn along the way, and you have to be resilient with that as well. So that's another quality that I would tell you is really important for you. But again, that's kind of like the nitty gritty of a lot of these things. And the American Physical Therapy Association has some resources that you can utilize. There's also different professionals out there that can help you with, like, if you wanted to actually start your own physical therapy practice, how could you go about doing that? You're going to need an attorney to set up your corporation. I believe in the state of California, you're gonna have to be an S Corp because we're a professional. You can't be an LLC. So knowing the difference between what an LLC is and an S Corp and all of those things, there's going to be information that you're going to gain from an attorney. So, but again, where I would start is put yourself in leadership positions. Put yourself out there to say like, yes, I enjoy challenging myself, learning every single day, moving the needle forward, understanding how to get up after I fall, right? After you have items where you struggle through, and saying, you know, I can persevere through that. So that's going to be step number one that I think is going to be crucial for you to decide, do I enjoy this or do I not, right? So with that being said, I want to tell you guys, thank you very much for listening to me. And I wanted to open it up for questions. And I don't know that I can see the questions. Hold on, let's see if I can make this bigger.
Let me check the chat here for you. Now, before we do go into questions, and thank you so much, Melissa, for sharing your experience with us. I do want to highlight a couple of people and lean into some additional input. But Eric Honbo, if you're still on the call, Eric is one of our additional regional directors who works in our Thousand Oaks and Woodland Hills location more in LA. But Eric, if you want to take, 3 to 5 minutes here and lean in on your experience with ownership and any words of advice you have for the students, that would be fantastic. And then we can go to Rick as well after.
Hey guys, can you see me or hear me here?
Yep.
Patrick, I wasn't planning on jumping on, so I didn't get all dolled up and mousse my hair like yours. So pardon my appearance. I'm actually at a car dealership. I have a nail in my tire. But thanks for asking me to help and chime in. Everything Melissa said is 100% true. You got to have the love and the passion. You got to be able to outwork everybody and outcompete everybody. I think the one thing that will lead to success is if you hone the craft, in this case, the physical therapy, and the product. That's the first thing I think newer graduates have to focus on, and younger therapists 1 to 3, 5 years out of school. Take as much continuing education that's applicable to what your specialty is, and develop a niche. Get that craft honed as best you can, and then when you're ready to jump and lay everything in place, like Melissa had talked about, finding a business attorney, looking at locations, determining, I think, first and foremost, what kind of practice do you want to have? What kind of structure is it? Is it out-of-network practice / cash-based, or are you going to look to sign contracts in-network or have a combination of both? We had given our business plan, which was revised about 4 or 5 times, to a couple MBA professors. I remember one guy was a professor at Harvard, and then at that time UCLA, and he skipped right through our business plan. And I was like, "Aren't you going to look at the mission statement and value and blah blah?" And he went right to, the only thing I care about is where are you getting patients from. All the rest is fluff. He told me and my partner Cody, who's a regional director out here as well. And where are you going to get your business from? And so I always tell new grads and people that want to go into their own practice, make sure you have 5 doctors, if not 30 doctors lined up that are going to commit to sending you patients. Make sure you have your skill and your craft ready to go. Don't worry about being in an area where there's a lot of competition. Melissa's right. We were in LA, and there were 29 other offices that we were competing with in a 8-mile radius. So when we opened our office out here, which was 12 years ago, I had been in practice for about 8 or 10 years before. And in that 8 or 10 years, we lined up our craft, we lined up our referral sources. We had a name in the community, a name with physicians, a name with 20,000 patients out here that when their friends or family got hurt, they gave my name or my partner's name. And so when we opened our doors day one, which the build out takes probably 8 months to 12 months, Rick will probably tell you longer sometimes. We had 15 patients lined up. We had 30 patients on the books day one. And so we did the same thing with the De Novo out here, a new clinic that Spina Sport we developed. We lined the referral sources up, and we lined up the patients on the schedule 8 months in advance. And so where you're getting your patients from is key. I think being able and willing to take some risk, fiscal risk, risk of time and effort, but with risk comes reward. I would be definitely, I would definitely suggest always opening your own practice, and taking risk, and don't be afraid. With risk comes great reward, and I think everybody who's taken some risk and found some fruits during that process and at the end would agree. I think you'll grow as a person and grow as a clinician. You'll learn new skills, like Melissa had mentioned, HR, fiscal, QuickBooks, learning on the fly, become a better leader. You'll become a better parent. You'll become a better father, mother. You'll definitely grow as a person. So the one key thing I think I would just finally add is maybe add to Melissa, find a mentor. Melissa's not that old. I feel like Eric's probably a little bit older, and I don't want to put Rick on the spot, but Rick was a mentor of mine. And before Rick's former partner, Larry, was a longtime mentor of mine. And Larry owned the first practice up here in this part of LA and kind of told me some of the tricks of the trade, what to focus on, what not to focus on. So find a mentor and outsource. We outsourced our billing. We outsourced some of the front office duties and allowed my partner and I to focus on business development, quality care, and getting that specialty product out in the community and letting the brand continue to snowball and continue to flourish. So there's a lot of, it's hard to talk like Melissa just did on how to open a practice, but if you guys are interested in it, take the risk, line everything up, get your referrals in place, and go for it.
Awesome. Thank you so much for sharing that, Eric. I do want to turn it over to Rick as well. And Rick, any take-home messages and lessons learned that you can provide to our students on ownership?
Yeah. First of all, I think your first choice is to work for Spine and Sport. I mean, I think you got to get the experience and understand how to run a practice and everything else. Because if all we had this lecture to all of our employees and everybody did this, we would be in bad shape. So working for a company that offers you growth and personal growth and financial growth and opportunity and leadership is a good pathway. So that's just an alternate. Second of all, Melissa and Eric, I guess I just figured out how I'm going to fill 2 of my lectures at Cal State Northridge, because my class on business management is 2 units, so I have a little bit more time. Melissa, you just did a stellar job, and Eric's wisdom is really valuable. I had opened my practices with a couple partners, and we had 7 offices in 4 different states, and so it was quite a different model. And the word that stood out, what Eric said, is the risks. This you have to be somewhat able to handle financial risk and the stresses of life that go along with that risk, and have a good backing. There's always opportunity out there. It is harder now than it was before. Contracts are much harder to get, and they're not all that great. So have your financial house in order, have your personal life in order, have the backing and the support of other people. And but I'm still encouraging people to go for it as Eric and Melissa did, because the rewards are great. But be prepared, you could fail. But then again, you still have a career. There's the nice thing about being a PT is you'll always have a job. So happy to help anybody out with more specific questions and everything else. But Melissa and Eric had great advice.
And I think that's a good point too. Like Eric started his practice from square one. I purchased a practice, right? And the second office that we also acquired. We acquired it. It was a failed physical therapy practice. They weren't doing well, and so we acquired them. So I didn't start from square one. There's lots of different ways to do this, and risk tolerance is huge. I had to take money out of my 401k to have the down payment to buy it. So talk about scary, right? And I had a house, we had collateral, all of those things, right? There's definitely something to that. And I would agree that like you need experience. You cannot just go out there and do this. You will have to gain the experience. And again, that's where I go back to, like, the mentorship program that we have, lots of different things. I gain experience from a very small clinic, but I took over that clinic. That's why I was successful. So I think there's lots of different pathways and forages. And Eric, I love your office. It was great. I was like, what are all those monitors back there? It looks like you're in lab.
I'm in Big Brand Tire, but yeah, it feels kind of lab-like here. Patrick and Starla, I think I have a spreadsheet. I'm sure, I know Rick does, a budget spreadsheet to start a new practice. I can see if I can dig that up and forward it on to you, and you can pass it along. But I think it's, just to chime in one other thing, I think anytime you're gonna start a new business, you got to look at some hard numbers and see at what point, how much do I need? How much do I have to borrow? What do I have to ask my parents or leverage my house for, or HELOC for, or at what point am I going to be profitable? And does this fit into my lifestyle? And then you can factor in then how you want to then plug in network, out of network, and some of the other things that Rick and Melissa had talked about. So I can see if I have that spreadsheet, but that's, I think the other key is, get a hard look at what you're looking at and see at what point is, can I add on more equipment or another therapist, or how much am I going to need to sign for the lease? So you have to kind of see that first to then see some of the other pieces that plug in.
Awesome. Thank you for offering that, Eric. And thank you all so much for your input on that. And students, I highly recommend, please utilize these people on this call as resources for you. I mean, we are here to support you, for life. So whatever you need, don't hesitate to reach out. Once again, Melissa is our regional director in our Orange County region. So anytime you're in the area, if you want to stop by, see a clinic, meet her, pick her brain, take a Pilates class, which I highly recommend. And it's actually a little bit more difficult than what it looks like, I will say. Please do so if you're in LA. Hit up Eric and Rick. And honestly, everyone is here to support you along your journey. And these are, between Melissa and Rick, Eric, and Starla, these are some of our strongest leaders that continue to bring so much value to the table here at Spine and Sport every single day, and really contribute to our overall success. So don't hesitate to reach out if you have any questions. We are literally all here to support you. And with that, we do have 10 minutes, so I do want to open up the floor. I don't see any questions in the chat, but students, if you have any questions about ownership or your transition from being a student to a full-time clinician, anything like that, now is a great time to ask those questions. So feel free to unmute your mics and ask any questions that you may have. Okay. Any questions at all?
Don't be afraid.
No one bites, I promise. All right.
If no one has questions, what I would tell you guys is, the one thing I would tell you tonight, no matter whether or not you see this in your future or not, is it will behoove you to go home tonight and write down your 1 and 5 year goals, at least your 1 and 5 year goals, if not also your 10-year goals. And I would encourage you guys to continuously revise those, because that is how you're going to propel yourself in the future.
And please write down your goals. I actually will ask as we go through our exit interviews. I know a lot of us are going to be ending our rotation soon. I will ask you what your 1 and 5 year goals are. I'm really curious, and just to see how we can continue to support you long term as well. So with that, we'll go ahead and end the call. We'll stay on for a couple extra minutes if anyone does want to hang back for questions. But thank you so much for your time this afternoon. I hope that you found this lecture to be very valuable for you. And again, for anyone who is watching this lecture not live or at a later time, please don't hesitate to reach out if you have questions. We are all here to support you and your continued growth. So thank you all so much, and enjoy the rest of your day.
Thanks, guys.